There was a time when we were living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I had a penchant for taking walks in graveyards. I liked the solitude and the trees and the stones and the epitaphs and things like that. And there are a lot of very large graveyards in Milwaukee. And on this day, I was taking care of a little girl. It's about 7 years old. We'll call her 7 or 8, maybe. We'll call her Greta. And she was a neighbor, and we were walking through this graveyard. Nice autumn day, leaves on the ground, and we were coming toward a sort of hill. It was very hilly, and hilly landscape. And she said, "Oh, look." And I said, "What?" And she pointed. She said, "Don't you see that little boy?" And I said, "No, I don't see anybody." And she said, "It's John." I said, "Who's John?" She said, "That's him right there. Don't you see him?" She's going into real panic that I couldn't see John. And I said, "Well, let's walk over there." And she said, "I don't want to. I'm scared." So I said, "Well, I'll go ahead." Now, at the time, I wasn't scared. Not yet, anyway. So I walked over the hill, down into an area where the stones were mainly flush to the ground. They weren't vertical, they were flat. And she said, "Stop, that's it." And I stopped walking and I looked down and the stone said John. And where she was standing, she couldn't see it. So then I said, it looks all right, come on over." So she walked over, and she started talking to John. And I couldn't see John. And I looked at the stones. There were three stones in a row with a larger one in front. The larger one in front was more ornate. It was more expensive. And as I read the inscriptions, I learned that the larger one was the father, and the other two, the middle one was the mother, and then John and the sister. And the more I looked at them, I looked at the birth dates and the death dates, and I came to the conclusion that in order for John to have died at age 21 or whatever it was, his mother would have had to have been about 13. And I also came to the conclusion that probably his mother was his sister, actually. And these sorts of scenarios, they happen quite commonly, and you can imagine how John must have felt if he had found out when he turned 21. And that might have been exactly what happened. He turned 21 and found out. And who knows what happened. And these are the sorts of things that at some point you could go and look them up in the county register, go back 100 years and find out the truth of it. But at that point I didn't need to. I knew enough. And whatever happened to John, he was still there. And this is the type of thing that scientists and skeptics like to sneer at, and they say, "Oh, well, people just tell these stories to try to make money or to get attention." Of course, the scientists and skeptics say these things to make money and get attention. So it's largely projection, I suppose, isn't it? Anyway, that's the end of that story. Bye-bye.